All right, then. I'd like to start by saying hi and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the second and last CIGRE Canada NGN Professional Development Webinar for this year, 2023. I am Emmanuel Agbaje and the current Membership Engagement Lead for CIGRE Canada NGN. We host 2 professional development webinars in a year where we invite guest speakers from the industry to speak to us and share career insights with us from their wealth of experience in the industry or academia. Just a brief introduction to CIGRE for people who may be joining for the first time or watching this recording for the first time later on. CIGRE is a French acronym which stands for Conseil International de Grands Réseaux Électriques. In English, this translates to International Council on Large Electric Systems. CIGRE is a global nonprofit organization in the field of high voltage electricity. It was founded in Paris, France in 1921. The scope of its activities include the technical and economical aspect of electrical grid, as well as the environmental and regulatory aspects. CIGRE's community of over 15,000 power systems professionals is spread across more than 90 countries. This community is underpinned by our 61 national committees, each offering members direct access to local events, services, and support. Every country has an NGN, Next Generation Network Group, which is ideally for young professionals and students who are under the age of 35. We, however, have more experienced and senior members of CIGRE who provide mentorship and counsel to us. I encourage you to follow our CIGRE Canada NGN LinkedIn page, where we post our latest activities. The Next Generation Network helps bring a new generation of power system professionals into the world of CIGRE and help deliver a platform where early career professionals can feel comfortable sharing their ideas, get an opportunity to interact with industry experts, and get involved in CIGRE working groups and technical events. Our mission statement is as follows. CIGRE Canada's NGN aims to support the next generation of Canadian power systems professionals by providing opportunities for technical growth, networking, and leadership skills for students and young members. Today at CIGRE Canada NGN, we're honored to have Brendan Harris as our guest speaker for our second and last professional development webinar for this year, 2023. Brendan and I met last year at Primary Engineering when he joined the company as my new manager. I had joined CIGRE UK NGN prior to moving to Canada, but had no clue there was CIGRE Canada. Brendan actually told me about his experience when he went for the Paris session and about CIGRE Canada, and I became interested and motivated to be actively involved with CIGRE Canada. Brendan is currently the design build manager at Primary Engineering with over 15 years of experience in the electrical utility industry. Brendan has a strong background in electrical utility design, system planning, and estimation. He gained experience overseeing the productivity and financial health of the design build department, managing a team responsible for numerous projects worth over $25 million in annual revenue. Prior to this, he served as a supervisor at FortisAlberta Inc, where he was responsible for overseeing successful delivery of capital projects worth an average of $15 million annually. He serves as the primary contact for coordinating the comprehensive lighting design processes, ensuring the efficient execution of project. Please, if you have any questions while Brendan is delivering his talk to us, kindly make use of the available Q&A box from the top of your screen, and Brendan would be able to get to as many questions as possible within the time we have after his presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Brendan. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Perfect. Thanks, Emmanuel. Yeah, really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to talk today. going to just kind of go through my background and how I ended up where I did and why I think some of the traditional processes and career paths that people have followed, and mine being kind of unique and how it's benefited me. So I really enjoyed how I got to where I am, and I think it's worked really well for me. So as Emmanuel mentioned, my name is Brendan Harris. I'm the manager design build at Primary Engineering and Construction. Just go, why isn't it moving pages? There we go. Short little agenda. So I'll just describe what primary is a little bit, and then essentially I'm going to go through my life chronologically and how those key milestones help me. So primary, we're in our 22nd year. We have about 420 employees spread over 13 offices. We're mainly in Western Canada, heavily focused in British Columbia and Alberta. My area of responsibility is Alberta, the design build market. So any of the work that a utility is not directly paying for, but is still utility work, falls to my team. The other half of the company deals directly with the utilities. So if NMAX or FortisAlberta or BC Hydro are looking to contract out work, we would be one of their choices. So we do have a construction arm in Calgary who builds our work. We joined with one of our construction companies about 11 years ago, hence the primary engineering and construction. So on to me. So started off, grew up in Calgary, graduated high school in the Northwest in 2004. Always kind of liked the practical side of either engineering and design. I was lucky enough that my high school had a automotive shop and a wood shop. I found myself in the automotive shop quite a bit. So at the end of my grade 11 year, I learned about something called the Registered Apprenticeship Program, where I was able to finish my high school while working as a car mechanic. So I worked at Toyota and was able to finish my curriculum that I needed to do for high school in the evenings while working. And I got my first couple years of my registered apprenticeship. In about 2003-ish, the economy slowed down. The dealership was good enough to keep us all on, but was definitely being a young guy wanting to build my skills. Was looking to further my education. I was attracted to the electrical engineering program. I've always been able to understand electricity. I was very good at troubleshooting electrical issues on vehicles in the shop. And I was quite impressed with SAIT's program and looking through all the syllabuses and meeting some people. Electrical seemed like the most interesting to me. So in the summer of 2005, I was on my co-op and I joined Schlumberger in the oil boom time when everyone was working in the oil field. And I worked in what's called the Drilling Engineering Center, where our responsibility was coming up with borehole analysis and interpreting the data. So very interesting. I knew absolutely nothing about it. Part of the reason I got into it was because from an electrical standpoint, there's a lot of signals processing that you do, sending commands down to the tools, but wasn't really electrical. And as you can see from the photos I've attached, spent time on site. And as a young guy who had a pretty serious girlfriend, who is now my wife, realized that wasn't going to be what I wanted to do. So when I came back and started my second year, I actually started as a draftsman at a company called CIGRE Automation. They were fantastic. They treated me great. They brought me into the team. I worked there on Friday afternoons after school was done, and on Saturdays, drafting using AutoCAD, drafting up oil and gas skids and pads and batteries and trucking centers. So great company, learned a lot, and they paid me well enough to not need to work at Starbucks, which is what I was working for previously, to get through school. So So my first 3 years, so in November-ish 2005, BC Hydro actually came to SAIT to give a presentation for hiring people. And I was flown out for an interview to Burnaby, and as a, I don't like 20 or 21-year-old kid being handed a plane ticket and get to miss 2 days of school, and going to Vancouver, I was wooed, which I think was part of the point. But it was absolutely amazing. So I got to meet with the BC Hydro team, did a panel interview with them. The gentleman who I met at the career fair at SAIT was on the interview panel. We connected after my interview, and he said, we'd like to hire you in something that's called the Graduate Technologist in Training Program. And what happens is you get to rotate around within BC to get experience. So you move to the four areas, so Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, Interior, and North. And they have various offices in each of those. So over 4 years, you're supposed to rotate to those four so that you become a well-rounded design technologist who, at the time anyway, the design technologist was kind of the senior technical designer in the area. So he said, he offered me my locations, and he said, and you also can come work for me. And I said, oh, cool. Where, we get along. Where do you live? And he says, Vernon. And I went, okay. I went out to the Okanagan quite a bit growing up, as most Albertans do. So I thought this is going to be fantastic, beach life and work for the government. So it'd be great. So moved out there, actually before I was even done school, technically, I moved out and started early. I also wasn't sure. I applied to get into the Camosun College University of Victoria Bridge program. I was accepted. I wasn't sure if hydro or the bridge program was what I wanted to do. So I kind of left both open. I didn't tell either one. Oops, sorry. Which, kind of left UVic hanging in the end. Not that they probably missed me or even noticed, but that's okay. So I absolutely loved my time at Hydro. It is an amazing organization. Their training is second to none, and that's not to cut on the other training I've been through, but Hydro's resources and what Hydro can do was absolutely phenomenal. I knew I was hooked when we were in Surrey at the training center, so they required us as designers to drive a bucket truck, go over to like a de-energized power line, put down the outriggers, go up in a bucket, and actually try and figure out how are you going to manipulate this? How are you going to put on another cross arm? How do you tie ties? Hydro's ethos, and I would suspect it's the same, if not more, was if you're going to ask someone to do something, you need to know what it is yourself. So I hadn't even designed anything yet, and I was learning how to drive a bucket truck. I was finding out what pulling number one cable in duct was like. Granted, we weren't very good or efficient, and it wasn't energized, but just understanding that level. And I think that's something that underpins my career, and I owe that to Hydro to kind of bring that to the forefront. Is you can be a very good technical expert in one area, and that's great. But having all these ancillary skills also were very, very helpful and useful. So loved being in Vancouver. I can very clearly remember the time I was stuck with utilities. We were up in a bucket truck and a helicopter landed, and all the transmission linemen in their bright orange gear got out, and the helicopter flew away. And I was like, that's it. I'm staying in utilities. This is super cool. So worked in Vernon. Unfortunately, personal reasons, it didn't really work out. So couldn't stay in BC. So we needed to move back to Calgary. So in January of 2007, I was able to get a term with Altalink, working in what's called their siting team. Very interesting, very heavily legal and environmental and regulatory. Not my strong suit. I was only about a year out of school. So obviously was a very difficult thing for me to pick up, when I was just learning how to place wood poles in the ground with wire on top. So at the end of the 6 months for that, we both kind of agreed that this probably wasn't the right thing to be doing. And I had a friend that I went to high school with. She says, yeah, her dad designs utilities. and they're always looking for people. So I went home and gave them a call, went for lunch, and I got picked up right away. And that company was Caltech. So I worked at Caltech for the next 4 years, and our main client was Fortis. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time volunteering, we'll get to that later on. One of the things I talk a lot about with students or newer people in their careers is um, my first couple years was really hard. I mean, I had 3 jobs in less than a year. Uh, I didn't have a lot of confidence left, so it was very difficult for me to kind of power through and be like, no, it's okay, it's going to be all right. Some things just don't always work out the way they need to be. I couldn't imagine me being where I am now had I not been through these and had those experiences. But when you're in the middle of them, they're quite difficult. So I started as a designer at Fortis and then was moved up to a project manager about 2.5 years in. I sat in the Airdrie office. I had a desk in Airdrie, so I was essentially an internal employee, but I had a different color badge. So Caltech was purchased by Stantec in 2010, and Caltech was a very small company. We were maybe 100, 150 people. Stantec at the time, I think, was about 45 or 50,000. So again, no issues with Stantec, but it was a pretty dramatic change for us going from having the owner 3 offices down from mine to having people all over North America. So figured it was a good time to transition. That's when I joined Fortis. So as I was a contractor, the first few years there, 3 years, 2008 to 2011, I designed pretty much anything that what we called the central design group did. So a lot of overhead, a lot of underground, a lot of street lighting. We needed to learn staking and witching on our own. And there's not a lot of interaction with other teams. You're responsible for your customer care. So after that, it was kind of noticed that I was able to put large pieces together and communicate quite clearly with customers. So they moved me over on a temporary position to project manager, where I ended up EMing some of the work I was already designing. And I got to work with my project manager training me how to be a project manager in Fortis's world. And then funny enough, as part of all of that, I came up with a few systems and tools to help me either learn or keep track as we were going through. So they noticed that, hey, you're pretty good on these computers and we're rolling out this new system integration. Would you like to go on this project? So I was actually pulled off as a project manager and moved to the IT department. And I worked on what back then was called the EPC program, where they completely replaced a Lotus Notes based system and replaced it with a CRM, which is a customer relations module from Microsoft, as well as a PMT module. So with my design and project management background and computer savviness, my responsibility was the project management tool. So I was the business subject matter expert, which is the SME. Essentially, what that entailed was that it was my job to make sure that the IT requirements, the reporting requirements, the business requirements as listed in the BRD, as well as the full training documentation, and all of those things were clearly communicated with the staff. So again, I'm 25, 26, I'm 3 or 4 years out of school now, and I'm training 130 designers how to use a tool that was $1 million to implement by a team of 35 people. And I go into this massive room. You can see our UAT training at the bottom picture there. That was one day where it was just everybody came in and just clicked to see if they could break the system. So really interesting. IT was never something I thought I would get into. Scheduling, again, same thing. Who cares in my mind at the time, right? Really kind of bit the bug of the flexibility and the interest in IT and those systems and what you could do with them. So at the end of the project, we knew that there was going to be a new estimating tool coming, and as part of project management and design, you need to learn. You estimate your own projects. We didn't have a true dedicated estimating team at the time. It was kind of quasi different. So I joined the what Fortis refers to as the customer connections team, and started as a quoter, learning how to quote. Ended up having an acting work leader position. So there was a work leader and myself. There was two of us, so we split the team in half. After dealing with the technical issues, understanding the regulatory framework, working together as a team, then the IT project for the estimating tool started up, and of course that was kind of why I joined and went over. So I went off, and I was part of a team where they actually brought I guess the vendors up from Tennessee, locked us in a room in downtown Calgary for 3 weeks, taught us and taught everybody how to actually build and code this estimating tool. So again, I'm going down the rabbit hole now of IT and system architecture, and so Fortis was really good. What they did was they essentially put me in the room, they pulled me off the floor, put me in the room with IT, and said, "Make this thing happen." And so we had a lot of flexibility on how the calculations worked, how user interface was going to play, and all of those things. So that was up until 2015. And then in 2015, at the end of the rollout of the estimating tool, I really started to find some interest in leading people. So funny enough, when I first came out of school, had you asked me, I probably would have said, I don't want an office job. I don't like offices, and I definitely don't want to lead people. As time went on, I started to work more and more in an office, and more started to enjoy leading the people. So working in the estimating tools, I really started to like training. I got to interact with a bunch of different teams. I liked the kind of the project management troubleshooty side of leadership. So I took a permanent position in Fortis's engineering department, which is my specific team with system planning, which I very quickly learned is a very small group of experts in North America. There's probably 26 to 27 of us in North America who did it for the various utilities. We met, like we'd go to a conference, a yearly conference in Montreal. It was really interesting. So our responsibility, besides my leadership responsibility, was load growth forecasting, metering infrastructure, system modeling, new system additions, optimization of regulators, optimization of reconductors, and just generally playing with the system that you're responsible for and finding ways to make it more efficient. And then once you find ways to make the system more efficient, you generate projects based on that, and it's called like internally driven capital, essentially. And then we would need to write up business cases because those would be filed to the Alberta Utilities Commission, and they would be tracked. So we would have to manage our own projects. So really, really interesting role in that case. And as well, because we had the system modeling capabilities using SIMDist, we also built restoration guides for the control center to very quickly be able to determine if they lose a feeder, where some of their switch points, as well on some very significant and serious outages where in one case we lost 2 substations. We would come into the office and just start clicking around in SIM, trying to figure out how much we could back up where with adequate voltages and not overloading the system. So that was the engineering aspect of it, which was very interesting. At this point, I'd been at a school for 9 years. Design really up to that point was mostly civil project management, construction management. I had to pull out some of my books and relearn, what power factor really was, how to calculate it, how to correct for it, where was the optimum place to do it. I very clearly remember at one point taking a voltage plot to my lead engineer and I was like, why? I don't get it. Why does this go up? And she just kind of stopped and looked at me and said, there's a voltage regulator there. I went, right, thank you. And I went back to my desk. So it was very interesting how little electrical 9 years into my career I had done. What I quickly learned, being as part of the engineering team, was that when regulatory filings come in, a lot of them are technical in nature, and the team who is the regulatory team is typically made up of regulatory lawyers or regulatory experts. So they pretty much bundle it. We have a meeting and they say, engineering, you are taking these 6 IRs, which is information requests. So I got a massive amount of experience working with and supporting various AUC hearings. So I was a part of a few hearings where we were going for new breakers, new transmission lines that I had proposed, as well as our generic filing applications for cost of service and things like that. So again, never would have guessed that being a lawyer or something like that would interest me at all, but I really actually kind of liked the regulatory side of things. So after 4 years, there was a possibility to go higher into leadership. There was a large team. The supervisor, who had been in that department for about 9 years, was moving on, and she had suggested that I come join her in her new role because we would work together. So I reluctantly left engineering. I really enjoyed engineering, but I did reluctantly leave, and I went down to back down to projects. So back down to where I started. I had what we called the central South Central team. So everything from Red Deer to the Three Borders was my responsibility for construction, and anything that was complex. There was some regional work that could be handled by the regions, but anything complex, substations, new tie lines, all those things. Absolutely love that. And worked there until the beginning of 2022, where unfortunately I had a life event where I needed to make a change in my life. I lost my dad, and there was it was just time for a change. I'd been at Fortis for a long time, and they were a great company, but it was time for me to move on. So I didn't know where I was going to end up next. And that's how I ended up at primary. So I was intending to take a little bit more time off than I took, but I ended up pretty much at primary quite quickly after I left Fortis, and I've been here ever since. So it's been a good change. It fits my new lifestyle, what I need to do and be there for my family. And realistically, I'm doing very similar to what I was doing at Fortis with a little bit more flexibility and growth. So I am responsible for the design build aspect of primary. So as I mentioned in the introduction slide, if a utility is paying primary, that would go to my counterpart, Sean. If a developer is paying, it would come to my team. So that's where I met Emmanuel, as he mentioned. And at that point is where he kind of interacted with CIGRE. So you're probably wondering what this has to do with everything. So I'm getting there, as people know. I carry on with a long conversation, but the kind of what I like to do and set this framework for this is just to show that I wasn't a designer, a PM, and now I'm this. As you can see, I was in IT for essentially 3 years. I was in the estimating team, which we didn't hire technical people in the estimating team. It was more business and regulatory. I was in. I didn't testify in the hearings. That was our director and vice president. But I was sitting there listening and recording and taking notes and working on things. And so the amount of experience and that I got was absolutely amazing. And that really instilled in me why doing all these different things was really, really interesting. So outside of experience for this, as you can tell, I like to volunteer. I'd still like to be involved in these things. I ran our golf tournament. I'm an avid golfer. I was actually a shop steward, so most of the staff at Fortis are unionized. So I was one of the union reps for our office for about 6 or 7 years, which was a great training for management, to be honest. It's, you learn a lot of things. Went to a lot of Alberta Federation of Labor meetings, went to multiple SIMDIS training sessions and AGM meetings in Montreal for my time in system planning. I like to give back to the school that I went to, so I've pretty much been involved in the electrical engineering technology program at SAIT since I left. Presently, I'm actually the chair of the program advisory committee. At Fortis, I sat on various boards, joint utility steering committee for the Alberta Transportation. One that was very interesting was the Alberta Power Industry Consortium. So essentially, it's all the utilities get together with the U of A, U of C, a bunch of people, and they do technical presentations and all these things. So this is actually where I was first exposed to CIGRE. One of my staff was presenting, and I can't remember. I tried to look and I don't remember what it was. It was a very esoteric, very interesting fuse coordination study that he did that involved harmonics. So he actually had presented it to CIGRE first and then presented it to us at APIC. And I was like, what in the heck is CIGRE? I didn't even heard of this thing. So it was kind of an underserved market at Fortis. The one gentleman was a member. Literally, the rest of the company was not. We had a lot of people on CEA. We had quite a few people on IEEE. But CIGRE was this void, I guess you would call it. And the more I looked into it, and the more I talked to my guy, it was like, wow, this seems actually very interesting. Like, I'm surprised we're not a part of this. So that's how I first got involved. So I went and talked to my director. I said, hey, I'd like to be a CIGRE member, and he goes, yeah, absolutely. And that's really how I found it. It was kind of by luck, really by another member. And then because I'm a technologist, I applied to APEGA in 2017 to get my engineering seal. So I do have a professional licensee of engineering seal. Again, from a volunteer standpoint, I've been a part of junior achievement. I like to go and present. That's my daughter at her school, electrical safety, as well as I've sat on a few boards for asset. And then as I was at primary, so as I was getting ready to leave primary, I had been to quite a few CIGRE talks. I'd watched some of the technical presentations from the previous CIGRE conference on YouTube, or I don't think it was YouTube. It was an interesting computer program that we tried to log into that you get cut off sometimes. But I found it very interesting. It was very, very technical, and coming from my engineering background in Fortis's engineering and that thirst for knowledge, like there was a lot of stuff that CIGRE was showing and teaching us that I would never use realistically, but just the understanding of it. And so that's kind of how I'm circling this back, is the day-to-day impact, I would say, of some of the stuff that I've learned at CIGRE. I mean, I'm not a transmission operator in the south of France where that I need to worry about, a forest fire between France and Spain that's tripping off. But the technical know-how and the ingenuity and how you can apply those things is really the part that I take away most from a lot of those chats. Is it's not necessarily true skills I can take and go back to the office the next day and apply them. But it's this overarching understanding of our industry and our people and the struggles of the industry. And it really helps us be able to provide areas of support for our customers, where struggles are going to be in 3 to 5 years, as well as just being able to meet those people. So I applied in 2020 it was my last year. I was too old in 2020. I applied for the NGN scholarship to go to Paris, and I came second. And I outlined exactly what I'm saying in my letter here, that, you know what, I am not going to be I'm not a PhD student. I don't have a job that allows me to sit around and give these presentations, at least not at this point. But I really do believe that CIGRE is a great ambassador for the industry and for the people who work in the industry. And frankly, if you're a nerd and you like utility stuff, it's really actually cool what a lot of the people are working out and doing when it comes to system operation, system management, future technologies. So in 2001, I'm sure as you all remember, the world kind of had shut down. So I wasn't a successful applicant anyway. It didn't matter. But turned out that in 2022, I had the opportunity to go to CIGRE as the NGN scholarship winner. And I traveled around. I got to meet a lot of great people, both from Canada and from also outside of Canada, who, funny enough, I still actually speak with. So I've now got friends in Australia. I've got friends in Romania, and watching them get their PhDs or remembering the talks they gave are very interesting. So, um, so to kind of circle back and loop this all together, that's I think the key thing is, and I continue to try and give back, and it's it's a very it is a two-way street in my opinion. I try and give back, but I do gain a lot from it as well. Sitting on the University of Calgary stuff, sitting on the SAIT stuff, joining at CIGRE, being able to encourage people to look into these career paths or to not shine away from certain um, non-standard and non-technical roles, especially if they're short term and you can see a path. I've been very fortunate that, you know, taking an estimating job, I've had lots of people over the years tell me, I can't believe you're, why would you leave a design job to go do this? And then as soon as I leave that job to go to do something else, to go, why would you leave this job to go do that? You're only just going to do this. And and maybe that's their experience, but my experience has been extremely fulfilling. I think it makes me a more well-rounded person to represent the utility consultants, myself, and CIGRE, the EET program, and all the different things I'm a part of. So I think it's very important, like I said, to as you can tell, in 17 years, I guess it's been now. I spent 4 years in engineering. Everything else has been outside of that, um, and I think it's made me extremely well positioned for the next 15 or 20 years of my life that I want to keep working on how to take this policy, take all the engineering and take all those things and bundle it up nicely and really be able to grow my career. Um, Outside of that, as you can tell, like I said, I like to give back, so I'm not a pretty busy guy, but I actually test on the weekend for my second degree black belt. I teach Taekwondo in airdrie. I am a competitive power breaker, so port breaker, and I've won a few medals at provincial and national levels. So hoping next year. I didn't go to nationals or westerns, which I needed to go to nationals to qualify, but I'm hoping I can go to worlds in the next couple of years and represent Canada for power breaking. So yeah. So as I said, I really do believe in, there's that, you can be a mile deep in a very thin experience set, or you can be a mile wide and just have enough knowledge everywhere. I'm definitely a person who thinks that, the latter of the two is very important, especially now with the changing industry and with the changing of utilities and how those are going to work, the multi-directionalness of them. They used to be very one direction. Now with DER coming on and the applications of DER into grids, all the protection systems are changing, the economics are changing, the regulatory is changing, and you can't make informed regulatory choices without understanding the technical side, at least a little bit, and vice versa. So I think that's kind of my life story, and that's where CIGRE, I think, does a fantastic job and keeps all of those people connected. Yeah. So I don't know if Emmanuel, if there's something else I said I was going to touch on that I didn't, because I'm kind of just kind of going. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think you actually touched on everything we discussed that you can touch on. So yeah, I'd like to say thank you so much once again for accepting the invitation to give this talk to present to us, the CIGRE Canada NGN members, um, on this second and the last professional development webinar for this year 2023. Yeah, so I just checked the Q&A box. We don't seem to have any questions, but if anyone from the people attending today, if you'd like to maybe drop your questions in the chat or use the Q&A, that would be great, as we still have a couple of minutes left in this talk. Oh yes, so we actually have a question, Brendan. So in terms of developing technical knowledge, especially when you started out of university, what helped you the most?
That's a really good question. One thing I would say is find something you're truly interested in, and it kind of gives you that drive to learn it, either at home or at work or at school. The most successful people that I've seen learn and really want to learn things that kind of catch their eye and are interested. And I know that's the same for me. So from the technical side, finding things that are just interesting to you and then figuring out how to work them out. I've taken courses in things I was just interested in on my own. I've gone and talked to our customers and been like, hey, I don't need to know any of this information to help you get your connection, but tell me about your system. How does this work? This is really cool. Can I come on a tour when you build it? And so just kind of that thirst for knowledge has been really helpful for me. The technical side, there's obviously a certain minimum that you need to do to be able to do your job. I think most companies have a training program to get you to that point. Uh, if you've got the education and that sort of thing, it's that extra step that will really make you stand out and be really effective. Is having, like YouTube is amazing. I watch so much YouTube now and just random things. There's a channel called The Efficient Engineer, and there's a few things that are they're just absolutely amazing to learn about. And I think that's the important part, is you just always are learning. And from a technical side, CIGRE's got a great set of speakers. So finding stuff at CIGRE that just interests you makes it much more engaging. Um, and just really is neat. Like I said, I remember very specifically a few of the sessions I went to in Paris. One was, I'm not kidding, it was about the forest fire between France and Spain, and the cascading fault that it caused in like Spain and France, and how they had to handle it. Another one I went to was about hydrogen in the North Sea, and using that as like a transportation mechanism. So yeah, like just really interesting. So that's what I would suggest, is find first what you want to learn or what you're interested in, and then find someone who can show you. And CIGRE, especially in utilities, is very adept at that. It might be 50 hertz instead of 60 hertz, or it might be from Florida, or something like that. But uh, yeah, like some of the people from BC Hydro and Hydro Quebec, they've got some very good companies and like power tech labs and stuff like that. They do a lot of very interesting stuff in Canada. So again, if you're interested in those things, those are kind of good places or people to find, and buy them coffee, nerd out essentially, right? Like just be like, hey, if I skip the dishes, you lunch, can I sit on the phone with you for an hour and just pick your brain? Um, yeah.
All right, then. Thank you so much for that answer to the question. So the next question is, what would you say has been your greatest source of motivation to keep you going in your career?
Um, not to belabor the point, but I'm really nerdy about this. I don't know why. And I think that is the part that has kept me going the most, is finding the thing that interests you enough that you actually kind of enjoy it. Work is work. We get paid because it's not always fun. If they stop paying me, I'm not sure if I would show up as often as I do, but I can legitimately say that I like my job enough that I might do something similar to it if I wasn't paid. I think that's the motivation. It has to come from within, and I think you need to understand yourself realistically to know what is your motivation or what's not. Some people, you just want, you want to play with models and you're good at the math, and that's the part that really engages you. And you want to find a job that maximizes what your skills truly are and what your interest truly is, and then the rest will come. And honestly, being honest with yourself if it's not the right place for you, or if it's not the right um, type of education, whatever, and being willing to go and get that. I like to point out my first year out of school because yeah, it was not great. It doesn't look good on a resume, and it was hard. It was hard mentally, and it would have been easy to probably just kind of give up or change and say, "Oh, this isn't for me." But I had to trust in myself, and I knew some of the places I wasn't the right place. So I made those changes, and it's worked out for me.
All right. Thanks again for the response to that question. So the other question is, are you able to talk about the EE teacher advisor at SAIT and the impact that comes from that? That is aid in content development, future prospects, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually I'm on two. I'm on the electrical engineering program at the Schulich School of Engineering, their industry board, as well as the EET program advisory committee at SAIT. So essentially, both schools are very good at this. They really want industry feedback on what their grads are doing. Are they good when they come out? Are they hireable? And there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of vendor sales saying, "Hey, we'll give you a free student license for this application." And it's like, cool, we use something from 1987 still. So sometimes schools get a lot more advanced knowledge than industry does. So it's great to have this meeting to say, a couple times a year, for they're like, hey, we're thinking about dropping all the power systems courses out of EET. What do you think? I'm not saying they're saying this, but obviously all the utility people would sit there and go, excuse me, like that's our entire life. What are you doing? And so it's a really collaborative approach. So to your point, is it curriculum? Sometimes yes. Is it labs? Sometimes yes. Is it just overarching, how are the students doing? So it's really just an opportunity for us to get together with the instructors, some of the students, and just kind of talk. They're like, hey, we're having low enrollment. What do you think is causing that? Should we keep it low? Are you guys going to be hiring? What do you see? And having those conversations. As so that's been super rewarding, as well, to kind of learn that's on a very different side, where it's definitely just a lot more about giving back and giving your time back to make sure that the program is the best that it can be. I mean, and I guess you could argue it's a little selfish on my side, because then I get the best students that I can hire, and then I don't have to train them as much. So there is I guess some selfishness there as well. But yeah, that's super important to me, to make sure that program is good. And honestly, both of the programs, the guys running both of those programs are fantastic. They're doing a good job. So they don't makes our life as the industry people a lot easier. So sorry, I can't see the question, so I'm not sure if I covered all the point.
I believe you did. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. So yeah, if you don't have any more questions, thank you once again, Brendan, for coming to share from your wealth of experience with us, and for all of the tips you've given us. So we will have this recording uploaded on our YouTube channel, and we'll spread the links as well, so everyone who pretty much would like to go through it again can have the opportunity to do so. And for those people who are unable to join to connect, now they have the opportunity to watch the recording at a later time. So we will spread that. And again, we recently rolled out CIGRE Canada NGN mentorship program. So it's open for potential mentors as well as potential mentees. So we'll be sending more information as well about that so that potential mentors can sign up as well as potential mentees. Then I think the process kind of like works such that we're able to like get the objectives of the mentor and assess that of the mentees as well, and begin to like assign mentees to the respective mentors. So yeah, more information about that will be coming along. And thank you all once again. For all of you that are able to attend, thank you so much. For those that are registered and were not able to attend, yeah, we hope you get a time to go over the recording. Lots of useful tips. I have actually learned so many things again today. Got to know a bit more about this speaker as well, which is great. So yeah, thank you all so much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Great job. Thanks,
All
everybody, for
right.
joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. Bye.